Hello there, Simon here. I've got a new lightsaber. Want to know how I made it in under 48 hours for $0 without any 3D printing or fancy tools in what proved to be one of the most challenging prop builds I've ever done? Let me tell you a story. This insane build began when I was contacted by Steve, who created the Cantina Rebels channel, with this mind-blowing challenge. Take it away, Steve.
It's a home-built hilt challenge. You'll have until the 28th of June to design, build, paint and weather your own vision of a Star Wars hilt. You have a budget of £40 or $40 max. You cannot use a laser or 3D printer. You can visit the likes of Lowe's if you live in the US, or B&Q etc. if you live in the UK. You can recycle parts and you can scavenge bits, but the budget is strict. Builds can be completed anytime, but you can only be done over a 48-hour period, and you have to film it. On the 28th of June, we all upload our content to YouTube channels and tag the others taking part in your descriptions.
So that was the challenge laid down. Now, I'm not much of a Star Wars collector. I prefer to make things from and inspired by Star Wars, but I do actually own two lightsabers. I have this. Fantastic $400 Xenopixel 2 lightsaber from Padawan Outpost, and this one I bought for my Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wan costume that I put together. Now leave a comment below if you'd like to see a making of video for that costume. And then there's this, my true pride and joy. It's the very first lightsaber I ever owned. I got it in 1978. It's not screen accurate, it sure isn't official. It's just a torch with a 1-inch plastic tube on the end, and I lost the insides of it many years ago. But you know what? I love it. So when Steve issued his challenge, it clicked. I decided I want to make something that would make the 11-year-old me proud and breathe life back into that original blade once more. And even though Steve's challenge was already tough at under $40, I thought, I'm going to raise the stakes even further and to make it for $0. And believe it or not, that was the easy part. I began the build by digging out an old LED powered torch. With a little surgery, I extracted a super bright LED from its heart. Now, it's not an all-powerful kyber crystal, but it was perfect for my blade. And after cannibalizing the rest of the guts, I tested everything still worked before heading into my garage workshop. Now, since 2016, when I discovered prop and costume making, I've curated a stash of useful parts for projects like this. I keep a couple of small bins with interesting greeblies, and from there I extracted a bunch of parts that might just fit a lightsaber hilt. I also have a selection of PVC and metal tubes. As luck would have it, I had a chrome pipe from an old Vax vacuum cleaner with a 1-inch interior diameter. This was going to be the perfect base for my saber. First, I rough traced my Obi-Wan hilt as a guide and cut the Vax pipe to size. Then I stuffed the torch's guts inside and tried fitting my 1978 blade. You know what? It fitted perfectly. Next came the challenge of drilling a hole for the power switch. I marked the spot, and to prevent the pipe from deforming, I pushed an old wooden curtain pole inside. With my handheld drill, I started with a pilot hole and then carefully widened it with a stepper bit. A quick test confirmed that the switch fitted nicely, not too deep into the hilt. Next, it was time to build out the hilt's body using some slightly larger PVC tubing. For the business end, which is known as the emitter by Star Wars fans, I cut a length of PVC pipe at a 45-degree angle, fitting it to the metal tube and leaving a little area exposed. Then came the grip. Flipping the pipe over, I cut a length to fit around the switch, extending slightly past the bottom of the metal tube. An assembly test showed it was already starting to feel like a lightsaber. From my parts bin, I discovered a black plastic end cap. It fit perfectly into the metal tube's crater pommel. Now, I honestly don't know where that part came from, but I'm so glad I kept it. I realised the battery holder could fit inside with some improvisational surgery, so I wedged a block of wood into the centre and then very, very, very carefully widened the hole with a Force bit. Seriously, don't try this at home, kids. Do it at a friend's house. Another quick test confirmed that the battery holder sat nicely in the pommel. Finally, I needed internal spacers to hold the LED emitter and the batteries in place, allowing wires to pass through them. I took a piece of PVC pipe, cut a large slot lengthways and hit it with a heat gun. That let me squish the PVC pipe down to fit inside the metal tube. For this, it didn't need to look pretty, it just needed to work. With the hilt's basic shape and functionality sorted, I turned to decoration. As I disassembled the torch, I found a small metal piece from its negative terminal that was a perfect little detail for the amethyst front. So I marked a spot, drilled through using a curtain rail for control, and pushed it into place from the inside. A quick test fit, and I knew that things were heading in the right direction. I then spent the next hour or so sifting through my parts bins trying to find other objects to add, but nothing felt quite right. I did manage to create 3 simple rings to sit between the emitter and the handle, and a couple of split pipe pieces to frame the grip. I also found a small metal part from an old hard drive that fit the bottom of the pommel, adding some extra detail. For all my improvised prop builds, the more real metal pieces I can get on them, the better they look to me. But as I kept rummaging, it became very clear. Every time I tried to add another part, it felt like it was taking away from the saber. This process really pushed me to realise that for a lightsaber hilt, especially those from the original and prequel trilogies, less was actually going to be more. So, satisfied, I took everything apart and went indoors to thoroughly wash everything with dish detergent, using a sanding block to take off any scuffs or saw marks. With all the parts clean of dirt and grease and carefully avoiding touching them with my fingers, I set everything aside to dry overnight. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, you know I get pretty obsessive about paint prep. I really pace myself here, making sure that parts are thoroughly degreased, not touching them with my bare hands, and definitely leaving 24 hours between coats for proper curing. This meticulous approach meant I wouldn't make my saber within a continuous 48-hour period, but I'm pleased to say that I kept my total working time, excluding paint curing, under 48 hours. So first coat was an adhesion promoter on all the PVC parts. That's a clear coat that helps paint really grip tight to plastic. After 24 hours, grey plastic primer. And then, another 24 hours later, it was time for the chrome spray. However, that beautiful May weather turned to rain, making it impossible to spray outdoors, so I took everything into my garage and applied the metallic coat, leaving that also to cure for another 24 hours. Now, I've spoken about this before, but my favourite thing to do with metallic paints for props is to lay down a clear coat on top. This seals that top layer and protects it. So, with the metallic coat fully cured, I applied the clear coat and, you guessed it, left that for another 24 hours to harden. The downside though is that a clear coat on top of the metallic almost always dulls that metallic effect. So what I then like to do is to put a final coat of metallic on top of that just to bring the finish back to life. This means that the prop looks great and it's protected. So if it ever gets scuffed or scratched in the future, it won't reveal any ugly primer or plastic underneath. It'll just show that slightly dulled, clear-coated metallic layer. So before I go any further, a huge thank you for taking the time to watch this. I'd really appreciate a like or a subscription to my channel. It helps these videos get a chance to reach other folks out there who'd enjoy them. And before we continue, I just want to say I hope you're having a great day. And if not, like the minor horror that's about to unfold in my prop build, I can assure you that however bad things seem now, they're only temporary. And trust me, things will get better for you. Right, back to the build. Here's where it gets rough. With everything ready, it was time to start gluing. I decided to use some 2-part epoxy to attach the metal hard drive greebly to the pommel. Then the PVC spacer went in to support the LED, secured with some hot glue. I pulled the LED wires out of the switch hole with tweezers and connected everything up again to make sure it all still worked. Satisfied, I soldered up the switch and connected the battery module. I tested everything, only to find that the switch was faulty. So I cut that off and soldered up a new switch. I then chose to use clear E6000 adhesive to glue all the PVC parts onto the central metal tube. I picked it over super glue, which always seems to run where I don't want it to, and has a habit of either taking forever to glue or glues things instantaneously before I've even had the chance to move them into place. And 2-part epoxy because I didn't want to accidentally mess up the paint or struggle to chip off any dried excess later. So instead, I applied the E6000, slid the pieces into place, wiped away the excess, and then the following day cleaned up any rubbery bits of remaining glue with an X-Acto blade and some wipes. Irritatingly, despite my best efforts, the E6000 had marred the paint finish on the painted parts. So I meticulously masked off everything on the saber, which was a very fiddly process and I tried to avoid by painting before assembly, and I hit the saber with another spray of chrome. 24 hours later, I examined the paint job, and disaster had struck. The top coat had refused to cure. I was leaving fingerprints on the saber, and the chrome paint was literally coming off on my hands. Now, there's no footage of the next bit, thankfully, as a lot of strong feelings were expressed. Suffice to say, I was completely gutted. I was cross, disappointed, frustrated, and I went through all of those familiar emotions that prop makers experience when paints you've worked with for years mysteriously decide to turn on you. I'm pretty sure it was the remnants of the E6000 glue and possibly something from the wipes I was using that stopped that final coat of chrome from curing. But whatever the exact culprit, I was left with two stark choices: give up entirely or bite the bullet and figure out a way through it. So I chose the latter. I grabbed my X-Acto blade and meticulously scraped off all the layers of paint I'd spent an entire week carefully applying. I sanded everything back to the bare plastic, thoroughly cleaned it with isopropyl alcohol, and then reapplied all of the masking tape once again. Then it was back to the grey plastic primer. I went through all the motions again: chrome paint, a clear coat, and another chrome top coat, waiting 24 hours between each layer to ensure everything had plenty of time to cure. Eventually, everything was dry, and I savoured every moment of finally stripping away all of that masking tape. The scraping I had to do had left a bunch of scratches and scoring marks on the PVC pipe. I'd been working so hard to make this thing look factory fresh, so that hit my pride a little, but I decided to roll with it. This sabre hilt, in universe, had surely seen a lot of action, and those dings and indentations would be perfectly picked out by the dirt washing later. It was then time for the acrylics. With a combination of my favourite paints, I layered up black, burnt umber, raw sienna and yellow ochre in multiple passes. I applied them, let them dry a little, and then wiped them back until I was satisfied that my homemade hilt was done. These layers allowed me to build up a realistic grime and subtle weathering to make the sabre look truly like it belonged in the Star Wars universe. So here's the final reveal: a functioning homemade hilt made for $0 without any fancy tools. It's built around a metal tube that gives it the same weight and balance as my expensive Obi-Wan sabre, and it was completed in under 48 hours of working time, despite all the annoyances that the universe decided to throw at me. And as a personal tribute to my little 1978 torch with a tube, this is the first time that that toy lightsaber blade has been lit up in easily 45 years. So here we are, my homemade hilt. Thanks for watching this video. I truly hope you've enjoyed it. Now, I'd really appreciate it if you could like this video, maybe drop a comment telling me what your favourite sabre hilt is from the movies. And if you subscribe, you'll see my next build, which is also Star Wars inspired, in your feed soon. Now, I want to say a massive thank you to Steve over on their Cantina Rebels channel for coming up with this wild challenge. It's going to be fun seeing how the other creators got on with their builds. And before I go, here's something I really wanted to do since I first held my little torch up in the air back in 1978 and dreamed of maybe working in movies or special effects. The very thing that led me to a 40-year career making video games. Now let's see if we can do this. Oh, yes. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you, and until next time, bye-bye.